The bowl season is upon us. Let the games and the fun begin. The Blue White Pulse is next. And great to have you with us on the Blue White Pulse. Steve Jones, John McGonigal, the Center Daily Times. John, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here, Steve.
Josh, we finally moved you off the update desk and into a chair.
It's good to be
here.
here.
It's great to have you here as well. All right, so a lot going on. Here it is. We get to this point. Penn State's 9-3. We can rewind back to the summer months as to what expectations were. Down the stretch, John, what did you see from this team?
I saw a team that finally started putting things together, not so much in the Rutgers game, but really against Maryland. I mean, it was a team that was in the New Year's Six conversation among teams like LSU and Florida, and they ended up just on the outside there, but they finally looked the part against Maryland. I like the way that Miles Sanders was running down the stretch. Trace, found some consistency against Maryland, and this just popped out.
You're fine.
I'm fine.
Josh, what did you think?
Well, I mean, to address your point about the Maryland game, John, that was the most complete game that I saw Penn State play all year. And, to have that at the end of the season, especially for a young team that they are, is really a good thing. And, you know the guys they lost, obviously Saquon Barkley, Kabinda, a bunch of guys who are now on NFL rosters. But to have this young a team end off the season on that high a note, get ready for the bowl game at that level of play, it's just great to see.
And the matchup will be in the Citrus Bowl as they take on Kentucky. Kentucky is in the same boat as Penn State record-wise, as you can see. Both teams come in 9-3 on the season. And you can see what Penn State has done in Citrus Bowl games. The last time they played was the last time they had natural mud at the Capital One Bowl back then. Worst weather day I've seen in a bowl game ever. The guy for the Citrus Bowl walks up to me after the game. He says, we're installing field turf next week. I said, you're a week too late. All right, so what'd you think about it? It's not really a surprise. It was really the Peach Bowl, and it was really the Citrus Bowl. What'd you think of the matchup?
Yeah, I think it was a surprise, or not a surprise, really. This was the kind of matchup that everyone was talking about if it wasn't going to be the New Year's Six, if they weren't going to sneak in to the Peach or the Fiesta. Just with the way that it would have shaped out. I mean, they really needed Georgia to beat Alabama in the SEC title game to have a shot to sneak into the New Year's Six, because then Oklahoma would have fell to the Sugar Bowl and all that. So I think this is what most expected. Some were kind of hoping maybe Mississippi State, Joe Moorhead.
Yeah.
Rematch, that would have been interesting. But this is a good matchup for Penn State, not a surprise.
Do you think it's a good matchup, Josh?
Yeah, definitely. Penn State plays really well against run-heavy teams. You look at Wisconsin, you look at Maryland, games that Penn State was able to completely stop the pass game, hurt the run a little bit, enough that they could get their best foot forward and get a win.
And the coaching staff remains intact, at least at this point, John. What kind of plus is that?
It's a big plus. I mean, you think about where we were this time last year. Joe Moorhead was leaving for Mississippi State, brought Charles Huff with him. Josh Gaddis leaves for Alabama. No such thing here. They got stability going into the early signing period, which is great. Jaywan Sider doing a great job recruiting. Corley's out there trying to nail down a couple of guys left. And yeah, when you have stability this time of year, when James Franklin mentioned, it's like this is crazy season for coaches, bouncing around. It's always a positive.
No question. All right, coming up, we'll take a look at the college football playoff, the bowl picture as well, and down the road, we'll talk with Rick Scarcella of the Reading Eagle as we continue with the Blue White Pulse. Penn State and Kentucky in the Citrus Bowl, New Year's Day at 1 o'clock. We'll continue and come back with more after this. All right, welcome back. The Big Ten into the bowl picture with 9 Big Ten teams making bowl games, 9 out of 14 this year. Let's take a look at the lineup. It'll be right out of the gate with the Quick Lane Bowl the day after Christmas up in Detroit, Minnesota-Boston College, Yankee Stadium, a rematch of last year's Orange Bowl, Wisconsin and Miami. Then you get to the 28th in Nashville. It's going to be Purdue and Auburn. at the Red Box Bowl in Santa Clara, Michigan State and Oregon on New Year's Eve. Also on New Year's Eve, it'll be the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, Northwestern, and Utah. The transition ahead to New Year's Day, where it's going to be Iowa and Joe Moorhead's Mississippi State team in the Outback Bowl in Tampa. And that's going to be opposite, of course, the Citrus Bowl. We'll talk about that, Penn State, Kentucky. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl is actually on the 29th. It'll be Michigan against Florida. Ohio State and Washington will play New Year's Day at 5 o'clock in the Rose Bowl. So what intrigues the two of you? Give me a couple of matchups that you sit back and go, okay, I'll watch that.
Hey, look, I'll watch the Mississippi State, Iowa. At least I'll try and keep an eye on it. Nick Fitzgerald, Kylan Hill, what Joe Moorhead and Charles Huff has done with that Mississippi State offense. They haven't been putting up a lot of points this year, but when they get going, it's really interesting because you just see those parallels with Penn State against a team like Iowa. That when Nate Stanley is clicking, he's good. When he's not, it's pretty ugly. But if those two offenses can click, I like that matchup a lot.
What interests you, Josh?
Well, I am interested to see how Iowa can face Mississippi State without Noah Fant. He's one of the guys that will not be playing in the bowl for the draft. But another matchup that interests me is Michigan versus Florida. Not as much for the game. Well, I do think it's going to be a great game. But with everything that's been said about Jim Harbaugh, him not being able to beat Ohio State, obviously Michigan's had a great year aside from that. But because he can't get that game won, maybe on the hot seat, especially if Michigan loses that match against Florida.
Well, it's interesting. Last year, the Big Ten went 8-1 in bowl games. Michigan's the one that lost. Yeah. I mean, that's the other part, too. They need a bowl victory. Now the college football playoff. Final four now set. It'll take place on the 29th. Alabama is the number one seed at the option of Dallas or Miami. They picked Miami, the Orange Bowl. Why? They don't want the Oklahoma fans having such a short trip. So it's Alabama, Oklahoma. Then the Cotton Bowl will have Clemson against Notre Dame. Did the college football playoff committee get it right in the end?
I think they did. You look at what I really look at is you have Georgia at 5 and Ohio State at 6. Ohio State was never really threatening to overtake Oklahoma. People were thinking, oh, what if they beat Northwestern in the Big Ten title game like they beat Michigan in the regular season finale? Would that be enough to hop Oklahoma if Oklahoma beats Texas? Sure, it was not. It was not. And so it was really between Georgia and Oklahoma, and I think they got it right. When you look at, Georgia had 2 losses. Penn State got left out in 2016. You've seen it. What's massive is you can't lose. You just can't lose. And when Oklahoma beats Texas in the Big 12 title game, I think that was enough.
There are 4 undefeated teams in college football: Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and number 8 UCF. Okay, that's your team. Go for it.
Well, I mean, first off, I do agree that Oklahoma, the rightful number 4, they avenged their only loss of the season. Mm-hmm. That easily puts them in the top 4. The top 4 they got right. I would have put UCF higher because, yes, they're a non-conference team. You can talk about an overall weaker strength of schedule, but the fact is the committee's been saying a lot of more negative things on them because they lost Mackenzie Milton. Right. Their backup quarterback led a huge comeback and outgunned the 5th-ranked offense in the FBS. Right. That has to mean something. And, I'm not saying UCF should have been in the top 4 because they shouldn't have. But I would have put them higher than a 2-loss Michigan. I would have had them as high as 6th if I was picking for the committee.
Yeah, and the issue is going to be this. If you take the 3 best games that UCF has in its schedule and you tell the Penn State fans that's your non-conference schedule, how angry are the Penn State fans? What are they playing these people for?
Well, Cincinnati, Memphis. Well,
right.
Memphis had a good offense this year.
I mean, you could justify certain parts, but you got to sell tickets with that.
But Penn State played Kent State this season. Do they have, 2 wins this year? I mean, that was a non-conference game for them. You got to tell me 3. Cincinnati's better than that.
Appalachian State, Pitt.
Appalachian State could compare with them. Pitt turned out better than they looked at the Penn State game, that's for sure.
The only thing I would have done is I would have flipped Oklahoma Notre Dame. I would have made Notre Dame 4 because it's their choice to not be in a conference. Mm-hmm. They didn't play that game. We'll come back. Rich Scarcella after this. Welcome back to the Blue White Pulse. Great to have you with us, and very pleased to be joined on the line by the outstanding writer from the Reading Eagle, Rich Scarcella. Rich, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, let's start with this. The last time Penn State won 10 games, 3 consecutive seasons, would be 80, 81, and 82. You and I would be the two people that would remember that part of it because we were around for it. What does it mean in this era to have it happen if Penn State were to beat Kentucky?
Well, I think it's a very significant thing, especially during this year, which I consider a transition year for Penn State after the last 2 years, after you lose a Saquon Barkley, a Mike Gesicki, a Deshaun Hamilton, and 9 starters on defense. So I think it would be very significant. And I just saw a statistic that there are only 15 teams in the country that have won at least 7 games every year since 2012, and obviously Penn State is one of them. So winning 10 games 3 years in a row, to me, and it would be the third time in school history, it would be very significant.
Rich, is there a matchup when you look at the Citrus Bowl between Penn State and Kentucky? Is there a matchup that you're really looking forward to seeing?
Well, I think, obviously Josh Allen has gotten several of the National Defensive Player of the Year awards, and I'm interested to see how he does against Penn State's offensive line. That, to me, is a real key matchup. He's obviously projected to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft in the spring. And, I'm just curious to see how Kentucky utilizes him and how he matches up against Penn State's offensive line, whether it be Ryan Bates or Will Fries.
How do you see this bowl game helping the underclassmen that obviously make up a big, strong part of this Penn State core?
Well, I think that's one of the things that's often overlooked during bowl season is the extra 15 practices that a team gets in preparing for a bowl. And I think it's a big factor this year, especially with a lot of young talent on defense and a lot of young receivers, not just KJ Hamler and Matt Kippenhammer and obviously Jahan Dotson. I think it's a very big factor, the extra work, and also using the bowl game as a springboard into next season. I don't think there's any question that a bowl victory over Kentucky would sustain the momentum that Penn State has built over the last 3 years.
A couple of years ago in the Fiesta Bowl, Jalen Smith of Notre Dame got hurt during the course of the game. Now, of course, he's playing very well for the Cowboys now that he's completely healed. But it started a trend of people thinking about, should I play in this thing or not? Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey both said no. Saquon Barkley said yes. How do you look at that, Rich?
Well, first of all, if any player decides not to play in a bowl game because to protect his interests, his professional interests, I can't blame him one iota. And I can't praise Saquon Barkley enough to say, look, I'm putting the team and Penn State ahead of my interests. That's a real personal decision, and I think, to me, I think you're going to see more of this as time goes on. Obviously, Will Grier, the West Virginia quarterback, decided not to participate in the Camping World Bowl game against Syracuse. But I think you're going to see this more and more, and I actually think that it's going to be another factor in leading to a expanded playoff.
Rich, when you look at Penn State's offense with the way that the passing game has gone with Trace McSorley, really picking up against Maryland, how do you see Trace and those young receivers going up against a Kentucky secondary that was ranked 17th in the country in terms of pass defense?
Well, I think a healthy Trace McSorley will be a larger factor in the bowl game than he was in the second half of the season. He played well against Maryland. We saw flashes of bursts of speed that he obviously showed throughout the season. But, Kentucky's got a really strong defense. Their pass efficiency defense is 33rd in the FBS. It'll be a challenge, but I think Penn State, if they show balance on offense, mixing the run with the pass, because Kentucky's run defense isn't particularly great. I think Penn State can move the football against them.
Rich, as always, thanks so much. Great pleasure. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, man. We'll see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Rich Scarcella, the Reading Eagle. We'll pick up with a couple of other topics here. Obviously, Urban Meyer stepping down. He did it right before the recruiting season, really kicked in the finishing kick. Ryan Day takes over. Your respective thoughts on Urban stepping down?
I think this was all about timing. You mentioned with the recruiting, early signing period coming up on Wednesday. And, Ryan, they're looking for an Oklahoma 2.0 situation here. You saw Lincoln Riley, a young, innovative offensive coordinator, taking over for Bob Stoops with the Sooners. They're looking for the same out of Ryan Day, kind of a prodigy, a guy who comes from the Chip Kelly coaching tree, worked with him with the Eagles and other stops. So I like the move, but it's all about timing.
Mike Loxley, not a lot of great head coaching experience record-wise, but as the OC at Alabama, he goes back to Maryland. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a good move for Maryland. I mean, you saw what he did with Alabama's offense this year, being hailed as one of Nick Saban's best in not just his history at Alabama, but throughout his college career. And we all know how strong that career was. So I think Maryland's got a lot of young talent on offense, freshman running back, freshman quarterback. He could build something there.
All right, Temple job, by the way, open. You hear names like Greg Schiano, Josh Gaddis, who knows. Coming up, our bowl picks. Do not bank on them as we continue after this. As a disclaimer, don't take our picks that seriously. If it doesn't work for you based on what we said, we're not responsible. Let's start with Miami and Wisconsin. Instead of playing in the Orange Bowl, they're going to play in the Pinstripe Bowl. Quick thoughts on this matchup?
Quite a difference between those two bowls, Steve, but I like Wisconsin. Miami having to come up to the cold in New York. I like Jonathan Taylor and that offensive line to get it done.
Well, Jonathan Taylor's going to be the same reason I'm picking Miami. You've seen history of the Pinstripe Bowl where it's been big running games that have carried the team. Miami doesn't have a Jonathan Taylor, so Wisconsin's going to run the ball better, come away with a win.
Northwestern Utah Holiday Bowl.
I like Northwestern. I like what Pat Fitzgerald has done this year, obviously winning the Big Ten Coach of the Year unanimously. Clayton Thorson can throw the rock. I like Northwestern.
Okay, Mississippi State, Iowa, and the Outback is yours.
It's going to be a good game, I think. I think Joe Moorhead's going to get his first win as a head coach. Noah Fant not playing in this game, as we mentioned before. That's going to be big. He's their best tight end in a tight end-based offense.
All right, let's kick it up now into a higher gear. Let's get to the Peach Bowl, Florida and Michigan. I know you started out with this, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mentioned the stakes that it could mean with Jim Harbaugh. I'm not going to predict whether Michigan's going to fire him or not, but I do think that Michigan is going to win this game. I think that Ohio State game, bad loss, but that's not representative of how good Michigan is this season.
I'm going with Michigan as well. I don't like Felipe Franks, Florida's quarterback. He's all right.
See, I agree with you. I think that's a big problem. Florida's offense, I can't see them scoring more than 17 points in this game.
They'll be lucky to get that.
I can't. Can't see it happening, and they're not going to fire Harbaugh.
No.
If he leaves, it'll be on his own accord. There are some jobs open. LSU and UCF in the Fiesta Bowl. See, I thought have some fun. They should have put UCF and Florida in a game together, but
they really should have. I like LSU. Greedy Williams, cornerback, is not playing, but I still like that defense a lot against a backup quarterback. You did, play well against Memphis, but no Mackenzie Milton.
Here's your shot, Josh. Does the UCF guys get it done?
I really do want to pick UCF. I mean, I really
do.
Go
for it.
Do it.
I'm going to.
Go,
it's
come
tough
on.
to with this backup quarterback there, but I think that they've been trying to show the college football world that they mean business. And this is the game to do it. They did it last year against Auburn. I see them 2 straight bowl wins against SEC teams.
You know what? I'll tell you a quick story. After the Big Ten championship game 2 years ago, Matt LePay, who's the Wisconsin play-by-play voice, so Matt and I were talking after the game, and I said, I feel awful for you guys. I said, they're going to send you the Cotton Bowl to play Western Michigan. They said, it's no win for you. If you win, they say, so what? If you lose, they go, oh, my goodness. I mean, that's what happens in that game. All right, Texas, Georgia.
I like Georgia. I feel bad for Sam Ehlinger. That Georgia defense getting left out of the playoff, they're going to want to get after him quite a bit.
Yeah, this won't be close. I mean, the first thing Kirby Smart said after that Alabama game was they don't want to see us again. I don't think Texas wants to see Georgia either.
Washington and Ohio State, Rose Bowl. Josh, go ahead.
I'm going to go with Ohio State. You know, I do like Jake Browning. I know you said you weren't his biggest fan,
No.
Steve, but it's going to come down to a quarterback duel between Browning and Haskins, and I don't think Browning outduels Haskins.
I like Ohio State big. I think
Big.
it's a touchdown difference on the spread. I think that's covered easily.
Yeah, I do too, because I think there'll be an emotion for Ohio State to win one last one for Urban to go out there. All right, Oklahoma, Alabama. Or excuse me, Notre Dame, Clemson. We'll go Notre Dame, Clemson next.
Notre Dame, Clemson.
Yep.
Yeah, I like Clemson. Notre Dame has been getting by. They're a solid team, but solid doesn't get it done against Clemson.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson might be the most balanced team in college football.
Yep.
You know, that defense is something else. I mean, it'll be tough to see what the freshman Trevor Lawrence can do. I think he can handle the pressure, and I think Clemson's going to win that big.
Well, the Heisman winner and the Heisman runner-up, Oklahoma and Alabama. All right, Josh. Good. I mean, I'm going to be in Tuscaloosa next week, so I'm going to tell them what you think.
All right, go for it, because I'm picking Alabama. You know, I think Tua's going to get the last laugh here. That Oklahoma offense is unreal. You know, number one offense in the country. That defense is going to get shredded by Alabama's offense.
Yeah, I think Alabama is just going to be able to run right through that defense with Harris and Jacobs, and I think they'll be able to control the clock.
See, 4 units are on the field, the worst unit's the Oklahoma defense. See that? No, but I'm saying,
True.
you start going by units, okay?
Yeah.
All right, Kentucky, Penn State.
I got Penn State. I think Trace goes out on a win. I like Josh Allen. I like Bunchy Stallings, who is the guard for Kentucky. I like that running game with Benny Snell. But when you have Yetur Gross-Matos, you have Sharif Miller, and Robert Windsor and Kevin Givens are playing at a high level on the defensive line. I think they control it from start to finish, and Penn State wins tight.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to look very similar to that Wisconsin game, because Benny Snell is a talented running back. He's going to get his yards, but Wisconsin started off the game, a 71-yard touchdown run with Jonathan Taylor, 115 yards in the first quarter. Yeah. They had less than 100 the rest of the game. Penn State's taking this.
Josh Allen, 18.5 tackles for losses this year. He's second in this game. Yetur Gross-Matos at 20. We'll talk to you next week on the Blue White Tailgate Show.